Hello, this is Unsung with GameLeap, and in today's video we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Instead of doing our normal tier list video talking about what's happening with patches, we're instead going to be talking about heroes that absolutely need to be buffed in Season 6. The balance in Overwatch is kind of an interesting state. There are a lot of heroes that are completely broken in high level play, such as Sombra, that aren't really able to compete super well in the hands of a more unskilled player. The picks today that we're going to be talking about aren't going to be things like that. These are going to be picks that are kind of just weak overall, that could use some quality of life touches or some general buffs just to make them a little bit more viable. But before we get into this, if you want a deep dive into all things Overwatch, make sure that you go to GameLeap.com. The link is in the description box down below. Go ahead and click that if you want to sign up and receive all of the professional guides from coaches such as myself. Anyways, let's go ahead and start off this list with number 1. In my opinion, the hero that absolutely needs the most amount of work in Overwatch is going to be Lifeweaver. And the reason for this isn't because his kit is inherently weak. As a matter of fact, Lifeweaver's kit isn't inherently weak by itself. It's actually a pretty solid kit. The problems lie in how the abilities interact with each other. Life Grip often kills the people that you're trying to save. It does impede movement. It feels like more of a hindrance than it does as a help. The healing on Lifeweaver is overall just a little bit too low. The damage is kind of and Pedal Platform definitely needs some changes. It's a very low value skill. The cooldown is really long for what it offers. In my opinion, Lifeweaver is one of those heroes that feels clunky, kind of unintuitive, and it's very difficult to actually find a spot in a team for him that doesn't feel like you're straight up griefing. There are very few Lifeweaver players, and even fewer Lifeweaver players with actual positive win rates. This hero is overall just kind of in a very awkward spot, and Blizzard really needs to look at how his abilities interact with this team so they feel like more of a boon than a hindrance. Next up, Roadhog definitely needs some buffs. The problem with Roadhog does not lie in his kit inherently. Roadhog is very solid. The hook is one of the scariest abilities in all of Overwatch, but because this ability is so scary, they can't really buff Roadhog in a meaningful way, right? So Hook is kind of in a awkward spot where like the one shot has been removed, so we're not able to pressure people super hard by ourselves anymore, but the environmental kill potential is also really high. So the problem with this is that other tanks usually do environmental kills better than Roadhog does, and they also have a better synergy with a team overall, right? Something like Doomfist is really strong on maps where we can knock people over walls, or people have to walk into us in general. But Roadhog is kind of in an awkward spot where the gun doesn't really feel super useful to use, the fire rate is kind of low, the damage is alright, but it's just very unintuitive. Hook is our only real scary ability, and we're a very self-sufficient tank, which is kind of an awkward playstyle to fulfill, right? As a tank in Overwatch, especially in lower elos, we want to be walking through and kind of guiding the team. But Roadhog kind of causes everybody to stand in a Mexican standoff sort of situation and then land that hook so he's actually able to get some value. The problem with Roadhog is that he's very easily countered, and so much of his kit is reliant on the hook that he's basically an incomplete character in a way. That doesn't mean that he's the worst hero in all of Overwatch, but there's definitely a lot that can be desired from Roadhog's kit. Personally, I remember the days of Overwatch 1 where Roadhog was able to run around and just be his own thing, and there wasn't really a restriction on tanks yet, and Roadhog kind of worked as a pseudo DPS. In Overwatch 2, he feels more like a DPS than an outright tank as well, and a lot of this just has to do with how strong the hook is and the effectiveness that we get from the hook, right? So maybe some work could be done to his E, maybe they can nerf the hook a little bit more, maybe they can make it not actually drag you directly into the team, but have a little bit more utility tied to it. You get the idea, but Roadhog definitely needs a buff in some way, shape, or form to make him more fun to play as well as more effective to play. This is one of my personal favorite heroes of basically all of Overwatch. When Overwatch 1 came out, Roadhog had a huge pick rate, and it's very obvious as to why. He's a very fun, tanky damage dealer, and in Overwatch 2, it kind of feels lackluster, which is disappointing. Now, next up in Season 6, we have definitely the most deserving hero of buffs, and that has to be Widowmaker. Widow is unfortunately in such a terrible spot as far as feeling goes to play. Balance-wise, I think that Widow is kind of at the most balance she's ever been, and that's simply due to how effective a good sniper is in higher MMR brackets, but not everybody has insane flicks or is an aimbot. So for the lower skilled players, the Widow nerfs really hurt. Not being able to sit at the very edge of a map and actually tap people in the head and get a pick is very harmful. It's kind of hard to play Widow in more mid-range engagements because she is weaker to things like Genji and Winston. Of course, any sort of real diver is always going to give Widow a hard time. She just feels like a very ineffective DPS to have. It kind of feels like a waste of a slot right now, and the amount of reward that you get for her high-risk gameplay isn't quite there anymore. Tapping somebody in the head and not getting a kill is pretty annoying. Just in general, this hero is already pretty hard to pull off. She has a very unique playstyle, and Widow is kind of in a sad state right now. So in my opinion, Widow should probably receive the headshots back, and this is purely because Widow is simply ineffective at the ranges where she should be the most effective sniper, right? Hanzo's still able to one one-click heads, why shouldn't Widow be able to do this from a little bit further away? She is a very high-risk, medium-reward hero, and that is something that we don't really want to see, especially from somebody as demanding as her. Anyways, this was Unsung with GameLeap. Thank you all for watching and hope you all have a wonderful day. Make sure that you click the link down in the description below for all things Overwatch so you can get access to all the professional guides made by coaches such as myself. But anyways, I will see you in the next video.